Start streaming right now.
Just refresh.
Nope, it automatically starts. There we go. So we are live streaming now. So the key is.
Nope, it automatically starts. Hello.
Okay, guys, we are live for the next episode of Artificial Intelligence and Deep Learning Office Hour. And today we are lucky enough to have Amir Shawat from Slack, who is the director of developer relations. And yeah, we're gonna have a good time with him. Before we start, maybe we'll just do a quick intro with Amir and his role. I'll hand it over to Amir.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Amir Shvat, and I'm the Director of Developer Relations in Slack. Developer Relations connects between platform and developers and partners around the world. So I used to do this in small companies like Microsoft and Google, and now I'm doing it in Slack. So my team's mission, is to help people build productive and useful integrations, bots, and apps into the Slack platform, and to use all the tools and services that they use for work.
No, that's great. That's awesome. And Amir, maybe before we dive into, all things AI and fun, and because there's so much that I think Slack and the developers on top of Slack can do and will do. Maybe a good way to familiarize with our audience, and not all of them are deeply familiarized with Slack, and hopefully they will at some point after this. If they haven't tried it out, please go try it out. Try out Slack. We are users, big users of Slack, so we are, and we actually have an app that we just published on Slack 2 days ago. Actually, today, actually. Yeah, we just published it today. It's coincidental, and it was a great. I will maybe take 1 second to say that the whole process from development to building it to deploying it was very smooth. The feedback cycle from the account team from Slack was awesome. So yeah, we had a really good experience. So maybe we get into the cool stuff. What is Slack, Amir?
Okay. By the way, if you have any feedback on the development experience or bugs in our API, let me know. I'd be happy to help fix them. Slack is a communication tool for teams. We're a place where you can talk to your teammates, but also communicate with the tools and services that you use every day for work. So the vision is that you talk. It's based on communication, on text communication. And it has channels that are topics, and you can have a marketing channel, and you can have a feature channel, and you can have an engineering or a dev channel. And people can join and leave channels and communicate with their teammates. So it's a tool for businesses. One of the cool things that we launched about 16 months ago is the ability to not only communicate with other people in Slack, but also to communicate with tools. So having a platform that helps people integrate their software. So if you want to close a bug, you can do that inside Slack. If you want to look up an account in Salesforce, you can do that inside Slack. So, and even if you're talking about an account, for example, you can have a bot that goes inside Slack and pulls that information about the account that you're talking about and put that inside the conversation. So it actually helps work be more productive. And our mission is to make work life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. And then the platform comes in as a way to help developers join our mission and make Slack better. In terms of growth, we're growing pretty awesome. I think from a user perspective, our users are very engaged, and we're seeing a lot of growth and developers and excitement about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things, as both users and developers on top of Slack, I think the app layer, the developer layer, is one of the huge differentiation, I think, between Slack and, think of any other communication tools in the enterprise that's text-based today, right? I think that's a big vision that makes Slack into essentially a communication OS, if you will. And so all you need to do is just you stay in Slack, which is very cool, which gives you guys some really crazy engagement numbers.
Yeah, I tend to ask people how many of them like to do expense reports. And I can ask you, do you like to do expense reports?
No.
Probably, right? People hate to do expense reports. But if you ask VPs, they usually don't mind doing expense reports. They pay for something, and then their personal assistant goes and deals with all the user experience crap of doing the expense report. So what if we all had personal assistants only powered by software rather than by humans? Wouldn't that be awesome? So that's one of the visions of the platform, to empower every one of us to have all these assistances.
Yeah. So part of the theme here is automation, right?
Yeah.
Not just collaboration, but because you guys essentially have a few layers of value proposition. And a big one, I think, as far as the developer platform can do is, there's so many disparate services an enterprise consume, right? I mean, expense report is a good one. It's always painful, but there are many others like I imagine booking travel or a bunch of engineers collaborating around a code base or what have you, right? You can be essentially with the platform pull everything into a single trunk. It becomes a single central nervous system.
Yeah, so that is definitely the vision, and the other thing is that it's short and contextual things. Think of like most of the processes that we do in work. So, for example, approving vacation for my team. I get an email and then I click on that email and it doesn't do anything. It sends me to another system, and then I need to log in, and it doesn't support my mobile. So there's so many points of friction that happen in traditional things, just like approving a vacation.
Yeah.
And it would be just a click and accept, right? So what if it would surface inside Slack and it will have a button? Or today we launch drop downs. So you would have like approve and here's or reject and here's the reasons why I reject this. So what if we could do all these short and contextual processes inside our conversational interface?
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, obviously the permutations and combinations of things that can be automated is just close to limitless.
Sorry. One question I have here is for the Slack platform. So obviously, there are external developers using the platform and develop bots or automation tools. But how much Slack herself use developers to further develop the tools? That means in-house, how much do you guys do this kind of development yourself?
So we do a lot of. We're a startup, so we're a development shop. We have a very big engineering team, and our platform engineering team is also very big. We don't want to develop the integrations ourselves. So the first, I think, 68 integrations we developed ourselves. And our first integration was with Google Drive because we use Google Drive. So we use Slack for ourselves, and we developed integrations just to make our life better, right? But what we found out is that we're not experts in all these processes and integrations, right? We don't know what would be the best task management system and how does that interact within Slack. So we're now partnering with all these developers and people who actually know how to do these processes to implement them inside Slack. So we're focusing on the platform and on messaging, which is our core competency, and we're letting other people focus on their core competency and making our interface more of a platform for that.
Sorry to interrupt, Roger.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think that's a great question because I think one of the things that we run a 15,000 person AI and deep learning group. I think one of the big themes and topics of the last couple of years is conversational interfaces, right, or text interfaces, or chatbot interfaces, and there's so much that could be done. I think we're sort of very, very early in that cycle of really truly applying AI, true AI in that field. How does Slack think about AI and deep learning and machine learning internally and as well as it relates to the developer platform?
So internally, we have a team for search and intelligence run out of our New York office, and their job is to facilitate things like better search or distilling the conversation. So when I come back to Slack after a few days, I could get a distilled view of my what was important inside Slack or highlighting what is important inside Slack. So we're using machine learning and search algorithms to improve our product. That's internally. Externally, we're working with AI providers such as WIT and API.ai and Watson to help developers build integrations. And here our approach is very pragmatic. We want developers to solve problems. If the best way to solve a PTO process is with AI, then AI should be the right thing. But if the process could be solved with a set of buttons and maybe a small drop down and not a lot of AI, then that's awesome. So from the way I see it, AI is a tool set, and engineers don't need to use for and else, right? And they don't use it I hope they don't use it all the time, every time, right? They use it when it's required.
Yeah.
So I would say that AI is the same thing. It's a tool set. It's actually not a single tool. That's a common mistake. It's actually a set of tools, right? It's machine learning, but it's also image recognition. It's sentiment analysis and natural language processing. There's tons of tools. And as an engineer, I just choose the right tool for the right use case.
I totally agree. What do you think about the percentage of application developers or boarders in general? How many of them are implementing more conventional GUI-based type of interface with the users, or how many of them are doing what we might call more fancy pants AI type of thing? What do you think is the percentage right now?
So I think there was a lot of excitement around natural language processing last year, and a lot of bot developers have over-indexed on natural language processing. They said, hey, I'm going to solve this, and my bot is going to solve everything. It's going to support chit chat, and it's going to support abuse, and it's going to support the use case that I want to, but also multiple other use cases.
I can see people are screaming on the AIDL forum right now. Some of them say yes, some of them say no right now.
Okay, I'm focusing on this conversation. So, but what I'm saying is that I think it's important to use the natural language conversation for a specific use case.
Yeah.
So what I think developers are now trying to understand is like where does it help? Where is it useful? And I think for things that are unstructured and topical, I think natural language understanding is super important. So if I'm talking to you about a topic and we're trying to discuss a topic, then natural language understanding is pretty interesting because we don't want to achieve a task. We're talking about a certain topic, like we're talking right now, right? Having our conversation here would be very, very hard using buttons. You would ask me something and I would press a button. Well, doesn't mean anything, right? But when you want to achieve a task, then rich interaction might be a very, very good and useful shortcut. Because I don't want to describe to you what type of color, and I might not even know that teal is a color, and that's the color I love. I want to use a rich interaction to choose that color, right? So there's certain things, especially in task-led conversation, when I want to order coffee, when I want to get stuff done, where rich interaction could actually help a lot, short-circuit a lot of cumbersome conversations. So what I'm saying, again, coming back to give you the too long didn't read, natural language understanding is good for topical conversations and for things that are not very task-led. And then task-led conversations are usually easier to implement with rich interaction, augmented with natural language understanding.
That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like right the community around conversational interface, right? There's a lot of momentum. Sort of the subtext of what you're saying is that there are a lot of momentum over the last few years, maybe last year around. You can do everything in the conversation. The problem with that is that when you're not 100% and you're only 80%, people lose interest because when the bots get confused, right? I think you set the bar so high that people's expectations are like, hey, I'm talking to an actual person when it's actually a machine. I think your point about making sure that it's the appropriate tool and appropriate interface for the right problem that you're solving, I think is important instead of being trying to be too engineering focused, right? And too pure.
And I say that every time is that bots and conversational interfaces are a user experience.
Yeah.
They're only as good as the service they expose. If the service they expose is crappy, then the bot will be crappy. And it doesn't matter if you use the utmost brilliant intelligence network. If the service that you're exposing is not the best service, then you shouldn't build a bot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what you said is actually very similar to the interview we had last time. That we interviewed two founders of board companies, and they pretty much expressed the same opinion that a lot of these NLP techniques or deep learning technique, somehow if you want to use it in real natural conversation and make it useful, it's not exactly that easy. And so in a way, a more structural task is actually more important. Now, you just mentioned the idea of rich context communication. So I assume, does it mean that other than text, there's another means of communication, such as you can use image to represent yourself? Because there seems to be a hot area in kind of natural language conversation world, because some people will want the machine also interpret the image as well and then do something intelligent. How do you see that is a trend in all these Slack automation development as well?
So I wouldn't say it's a trend. I first saw it when I talked to the Google Assistant bots when it just launched. And I uploaded a photo of my cat just to see what will happen, because people like to play with bots, and I think that's delightful. So I uploaded a photo of my cat, and the bot came back to me and said, "Oh, that's an awesome cat. Do you want to search for cats?" And I'm like, "Whoa!" It blew my freaking mind. And I think it has interesting use cases also in business, because what if I upload a receipt? Or what if I do expense reports? As we said, we don't like to do expense report. What if I just take a photo of my receipt and the bot automatically recognizes the images there and actually classifies that, right? And the cool thing is that we have all these APIs, so we can actually do a lot of smart things that haven't been able to be done up until now. So I upload the photo of the receipt, and the bot could go to my calendar and see that this is a receipt for a meeting that I had with two partners, right? So it could actually go into the API of the expense and say, hey, this is a receipt for dinner with X partners, right? So you can actually do a lot with artificial intelligence in a way that is not common what we think intelligence is. So a lot of people think that intelligence is understanding language. What I'm saying intelligence is something just like facilitating and short-circuiting processes could be surfaced with intelligence. We all use intelligence. Every time we shop at Amazon, we use intelligence, right? It tells us which other products we should buy. It's actually quite accurate most of the time because it uses statistical and machine learning algorithms.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting, which is a lot of what you just described is classification, right? Which is much more doable today than some of the more full on NLP having a conversation with the bot. So that's interesting. Now, one of the questions that our audience have asked was, you know, you guys have hundreds to maybe thousands of bots and applications right now. Do you see a theme in terms of what kind of bots and apps that tend to resonate with the Slack's user base that tends to get adoption?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, we have thousands and more of bots installed on Slack. And one of the key things is that a lot of our paid users are using bots. So more than 90% of our paid teams are actually using bots, and more than on an average of 8 bots per team. Wow. So that means that we're seeing a lot of interest from our paying users, and I think this gives you some understanding to where we're planning towards. So we're looking into bots that make your work life better. So if you're building something which is for play or for fun, that's great. But the most used bots are bots that help with productivity, bots that connect tools that you already use, like Trello, bug tracking tools, like CRM, like ServiceNow, like all the tools that you use today to do your work. These are the most common bots. And then you have a layer of startup bots that facilitate new processes over Slack. So we have GrowBot, for example, that helps you give kudos and congratulate other people in the team using the bot. And there's Donut, which I just used, and it was awesome. Donut is a bot that you install on your team, and it picks 2 people randomly from the team and say, hey, you have to take lunch together.
You eat donuts for lunch?
Yeah, exactly. Go and have donuts. It's probably not healthy, but it's very good for the team spirit. So things that help people build better businesses is what we're tackling, and that's where we're looking at in terms of like useful and productive bots.
Got it. No, that's really interesting and really helpful. Are you, and then on the so that you have some really mind blowing stats in terms of your paid users having using an average of 8 bots. Wow, that's actually much higher than I if you were to ask me. And are you seeing on the user side, the paid user side, do you find that people tend to I mean, I'll use what may be a bad analogy, like mobile apps, right? So there's a lot of experimentation. Users tend to download apps and play around with it the first N number of years. And now, once people kind of say, hey, these are the 25 apps that I use every month, I really don't download that new apps that often. Do you think that will happen on Slack, or do you think the use case is different enough that people will explore ways to kind of be more productive? Maybe apples and oranges here.
So I'm an engineer, so the right answer that pops into my mind is that I don't know, because it's the future.
Yeah.
When I worked in Android, and we didn't know that we were going to have 5 common apps that everybody uses, 20 common apps.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that messaging is going to be the most active apps, and we didn't even know that the use case of Uber would be one of the most successful things. One of the good quotes I heard from Eric Schmidt is that he builds the technology. He doesn't know what people are going to, what will be the amazing use cases. He just knows this technology will enable the use cases. I think that what we'll see is a few big winners, a few new big winners. If you look at the last revolution, and you look at web, right? Salesforce came to the world with a promise of CRM over web. Everybody thought it was stupid because Oracle was already doing it on Win32, and why do it on web? And this is like, the web is a risk. But now they're like, everybody's using Salesforce because everybody wants to access their CRM through the web, and they don't want to install a Win32 app, right? So I think there's a revolution here, and there's like a tidal wave that is coming. And if you think about what is the most useful thing that I could do with this new technology that was not able before, that's where we'll see the big winners. So I don't know if I answered your question. I don't know if I know the right answer. What I'm saying is that the opportunity here is to create the next Salesforce or the
Yeah.
next Uber, because there's a new paradigm in town.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of your user base, if I'm a developer that, and our audience, for example, most of them are developers, and if they would, if you were to say, hey, Slack has a huge user base. If you're a developer and who's interested or intrigued to build on our platform, what would you say to them in terms of, your user base being, having X, Y, and Z parameters that might interest them for them to monetize their app or their bot on top of Slack?
Okay. So first, if you're a developer, api.slack.com. That's the commercial. Now or Google it, Slack platform. I think the key with our users is, first of all, they're business users. So they're very well qualified. So if you're building a business use case, then that's the right approach. The other thing is that they're highly engaged. They spend most of their time in Slack, and they create content and they read content every day inside Slack. So work happens in Slack. So if you're thinking about a new user interface and you think about short and contextual actions that you need to take during your work, then Slack is the right approach. And another thing which is kind of surprising is that these are paying users. So if they're paying us, there's a high potential that if you develop a useful service, they might pay you. So we qualified them for you, and you get a highly engaged, highly qualified, and paying users for your audience. And I think as a developer myself, that sounds to me like a good value proposition. And again, I'm an engineer. If you do this and it doesn't work for you, you should explore other things. You should explore mobile. You should explore web. You should explore everything. But this is a new opportunity, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, no, that's.
I have a follow-up questions right there. What do you think? So there are so many type of workflow that can be automated, and so I think the first questions I have is, what is the type of workflow that you think should be automated better, and they are a huge market there that make the developer motivated to automate it. And the second thing is, I think you mentioned that already. You mentioned that already a little bit, which is there are many commercial clients of yours, and their workflow are mainly doing PTO or doing a timesheet type of things. And there are also folks which are like developer house that their main workflow is to interact with GitHub, Trello, or bug tracking type of applications. Which one is bigger? What is the which one has a bigger market that if I'm a developer, I want to use it?
So that's a good question, and I'm answering it as myself. I used to mentor startups. I think the first thing as a developer is to look at where is your domain expertise. If you're a developer who's like DevOps developer and you see a lot of processes there that could be solved and automated, then by all means DevOps is still very, very ripe for disruption. So, but if you're like a developer with a good experience in hiring is highly manual. A lot of things that could be automated in hiring. So I would build a hiring integration. So my first thing is look at where you're passionate at, and look at what is your domain knowledge. Where do you want to explore? I think every angle right now is still a greenfield opportunity, which is pretty mind-blowing because we haven't had that in a very, very long time, right? So any aspect that makes you interested in, from sales to marketing automation to legal. I even seen a legal bot that checks your NDAs and see how and does a diff between your NDAs and your standard NDA in the company. So
that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Like that, I would think about what do I know and where is my expertise and what are the processes that could be automated there. So every aspect of our work life could be automated. I used to have hair before I started this, and there's so many processes that are painful in every company, and every one of us has scars from all these processes that we hate doing. If we can automate them, then we make our life better.
Yeah, and Amir, for the audience who actually don't know how big, I'm not sure if you guys make the number public. Just your MAU, your rough MAU for how big paid and unpaid users are on Slack.
I think we just launched numbers with VentureBeat, and it was 5 million.
So
users.
5 million monthly actives.
Yeah, I think so, but I can check. But yeah, I think that's the latest number.
Yeah,
we
got it. So that's really interesting. I mean, obviously, if you're a developer and that's where the budget is, and 5 million monthly actives, that's a huge number.
Yeah,
So.
one of the interesting things is that our installation model is a little different than other bot platforms. So if you install a bot in a team and you're a single person, everyone in that team gets that bot as a service. So you can have one person install your bot, and then you have 10,000 new users.
Yeah, so this is a very nuanced viral point that people ought to take notice of, right?
Yeah. So in contrast to customer use cases, where every user is unique and you need to acquire every user, here you need to acquire teams. So you need to invent teams to use your bot.
What and on that, what have you seen as sort of adoption models that apps and bot makers have sort of used to quote unquote infect teams, right? The modalities. What have you seen that sort of work, the best practices, if you will?
I think the best practice I've seen is a good onboarding. I think that's the key for getting teams to use your bots. Because bots and conversation interfaces are semi-transparent, there's no intuitive way currently to invoke your functionality. Educating developers about how to use the bots is super important. And then taking paradigms that are known to people. I'll give you an example, not from Slack, but from email. I use a bot called X.AI, which is an email bot. And the way I work with it is that is the same way I used to work with my personal assistant.
Yeah.
I get on emails and say, hey, I'm adding Amy to coordinate the meeting. So think about how do you do jobs right now and try to mimic the same process if it's positive.
Yeah.
In order to facilitate your business process. So don't try to reinvent the wheel, try to improve the wheel. I guess that's another best practice.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of where do you reach our audience? And our audience is usually they use Product Hunt, they read Medium posts, they go on Twitter. So reach our audience where they are and talk to us. So if you have a useful bot that is already being used quite a lot and you want to be featured, for example, ping us on social media and tell us that it's happening, and we'll be happy to share the love.
And this will be featured on essentially the app directory front page.
That's slack.com/apps.
Got it. That's really useful for the audience to know. That's great. I've got another question from the audience, from Richard Nees. So this is and this is maybe less about Slack and sort of, I mean, your thoughts on how audio and voice interfaces would evolve. So his question, I'm going to read verbatim, right? Which is, today obviously using hashtags to highlight key contextual metadata has kind of become an accepted standard during a conversation with Twitter and Slack and other related social apps. But there's a lot of rapid movement to the voice to text or the voice commands with Alexa and Google Home and the like. How do you personally see contextual sort of meta tagging being transposed into the audio voice world of the Alexas of the world, right? How do you meta tag something? Have you seen anything that sort of worked well, and any conventions that sort of worked well?
So this is totally not connected to Slack.
Yeah.
This is my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I think we won't do. This is where computer science needs to kick in really hard, because I see my kids and how they interact with Alexa. They don't care about tagging. They don't want to say. They just say what they want. And this is where we'll need to do a lot of understanding about what do they want, and what is the intent and what is the entities, and also break out of that paradigm at all. Because I think right now when we're talking to each other, your brain is not doing entity extraction and it's not doing intent mapping.
Right.
It does something completely different, and we need to rethink about how we do natural language understanding. So that's my take. We'll need to go back into philosophy and biology to understand how machines can understand language. But I think at the end of the day, this is where users will say what they want. They won't learn how to tag things. They'll express themselves, and we'll need to learn what they actually want. And I might be wrong, and it could be that we'll have something like hashtag song play me Madonna, and then. But I don't think that will be the case. I think the case would be, hey, I just want to play Madonna, and the machine will need to know if I'm talking about a movie, if I'm talking about a song, if I'm talking about a game, and on the context, do the right thing. And I think Amazon has just done an amazing thing, which is that you don't need to install the skills anymore. You just say what you want, and they pull the skill automatically. They announced that last week, and I think that's very exciting for me because it tells me that they have a higher level of confidence about mapping the right intent.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, that's evolving model and new interaction model. It'll be interesting to see how it develops.
And it's on us. In voice, there's not going to be a lot of tagging or classification. It's on us as developers to understand the language and to map it to the actual thing that the user wants.
Yeah, I think that is a very perceptive idea. A couple of weeks ago, there was a report trying to look at average American, how much do they really use AI, and they found that there's only 10% of people who is routinely using Alexa, and if you look at 10 years ago, that number perhaps is only 1 to 2%. That speech recognition was not that prevalent. And it's really, there are a lot of things it's up to us to see what will happen in the future, how speech recognition really will change our way to interact with computers. Perhaps people just love to tweak and make sure that they have 5 minutes of fame, even in the future. We never know.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, every time I ask a room full of audience, how many of you use AI, not a lot of them raise their hands. But when I ask them, how many of you shop in Amazon or in any other e-commerce, they all raise their hands. And it's actually, most of these engines are powered by AI. So everybody's using AI. Every time you see an ad on the web, it's probably powered by some sort of machine learning. So
the search is AI. The search is AI already.
Exactly. We're all using AI. And the best quote I heard is that AI is a self-deprecating term. Once it actually works, you don't call it AI. You call it shopping. You call it work. But it's powered by AI. It's like nobody uses for loops, right? Do you use for loops in your day? Oh yeah, every watch and everything, right? It's a underpinning technology.
Yeah.
A lot of people has been saying, well, AI is stealing our job, but those are people who go to Google every single day, and it's so prevalent these days. But that's a digression. Sorry.
Yeah, I have 10 more bars in my.
I think we pretty much it is timely. We pretty much run through all our questions. Amir, if there's anything else you'd like to add, I want to reserve a couple more minutes because you probably just have a couple more minutes. Yeah.
So first of all, thank you for doing this. This is awesome. I really enjoyed speaking with you guys, and I'll be happy to come up anytime you like. I think for developers, I think just look and explore around conversational interface. As an engineer, this is really exciting for me because I've been building bots on SMS 10 years ago. And I think we're coming back to the place where we can do a lot of interesting things with conversational interface. And there was the web revolution, and there was the mobile revolution, and this is the new revolution. And I think for entrepreneurs and for developers, this is going to be super exciting. We just launched drop downs today, so you'll be able to do a lot of interesting things. So you can like query things from other systems, and you can use AI to actually choose what to surface to a user at any specific time. So keep up, look at the APIs, look at our change log. We're trying to be very transparent. We have two Trello boards. One of them is about ideas that we have. So if you Google Trello, Slack, and ideas, or you can also look at our roadmap. So we opened our roadmap, so you can see what we're thinking about and what we're planning. So you can Google Trello and Slack and roadmap and look at our Trello boards, what we're planning to launch, and keep the communication going. And we'll be very happy to see you. I'll be in Europe in the next couple of weeks. So happy to talk to any developer.
Yeah, absolutely. We will, when we repost this back into our channel, we'll post the appropriate links to the APIs and the building and all that stuff, so that people would have it. And Arthur and I are based in Boston, so if you're ever in Boston, let us know. We'd love to host you in person.
Cool. That sounds awesome.
Awesome. Well, Amir, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you being generous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you.
Take care. Bye-bye.